How many times have you stopped yourself from doing something because you couldn't guarantee how it would turn out? Maybe you knew something needed to change. Maybe an opportunity appeared. Maybe a relationship, job, or chapter of your life had reached its natural end. You could feel that it was time to move forward, but there was one problem. You wanted to know what happened next, and not just the next step. You wanted to know the 5 steps after that as well. Because somehow, if we could just know how everything was going to turn out, taking that first step would feel so much easier. Welcome to Conversations with Leanne, where we explore everyday life through both the spiritual and the human side. Not to tell you what to believe, but to encourage curiosity, understanding, and reflection. Today we're asking, why do we need to know what happens next? The spiritual side. From the spiritual side, we're often encouraged to trust. Trust the journey, trust the timing, trust that we're being guided. And there's something beautiful about that idea. But I also think we sometimes make trust sound much easier than it actually is. Because it's one thing to say, trust the journey. It's another thing entirely when you're standing at a crossroads in your own life and you can't see where either road leads. That's when we start asking, but how do I know? What if I choose the wrong path? What if this doesn't work? And what happens after that? Perhaps spiritual trust isn't about knowing that everything will unfold exactly as we want it to. Maybe it's accepting that we don't always get to see the entire path before we're asked to walk it. Sometimes all we can see is the next step. And perhaps that's enough. The human side. Then there's the very human side of this. Our minds naturally like predictability. Knowing what's coming can help us feel safe. Think about how often we organize our lives around knowing what happens next. We make plans, we have routines, we put things in calendars, we check the weather, we prepare. There's nothing wrong with any of that. Planning is useful. The difficulty comes when our need for certainty prevents us from moving at all. When we're faced with uncertainty, we can start filling in the gaps ourselves. We think, then we overthink, we imagine different scenarios. We replay conversations that haven't even happened yet. We look for reassurance. We ask other people what they think. And sometimes, after doing all of that, we're still standing in exactly the same place. Not necessarily because staying is what we really want, but because the familiar can feel safer than the unknown. And I think this is where the spiritual side and the human side come together beautifully. Maybe we don't have to choose between being practical and trusting. We can gather information, we can consider the consequences, we can make sensible plans, we can listen to the people we trust, and then there may come a point when we've done everything we reasonably can, and certainty still hasn't arrived. That's when perhaps the questions change. Instead of asking, can I guarantee this will work? Maybe we ask, do I know enough to take the next step? Because life rarely gives us guarantees. We don't know how a new relationship will unfold. We don't know whether a new opportunity will work out. We don't know exactly who we'll become when we leave something familiar behind. And sometimes the path changes after we've already started walking it. Perhaps moving forward was never supposed to require having the whole map. Maybe we simply need enough clarity for the step that's immediately in front of us. Then, when we arrive there, we look again. So I'd like to leave you with something to think about. Is there something in your life you've been waiting to feel completely certain about? Something you've been researching, thinking about, talking about, or putting off? Because you want to know how it will turn out before you begin? And if there is, ask yourself another question. What is the next step I actually know I can take? Not the next 10, just one. Because perhaps we don't always need to know what happens next. Perhaps sometimes we need to trust ourselves enough to begin and allow the rest of the path to reveal itself as we walk it. Thank you for joining me for another Conversations with Leanne. Until next time, believe and trust. I am Leanne.